If your feet always stick out when you walk, you've probably thought, it's because I have flat feet, or it's the structure of my hips, or it's because my family walks this way, or maybe in some cases it's because of too much body weight. But from a biomechanics standpoint, there's really only two reasons that you might walk with duck feet. I'm going to show you what those reasons are, how you can test to see which of those issues that you are dealing with, and then you'll get a sequence of exercises that'll enhance your mobility so you can fix those duck feet for good. So the reason you walk like a duck is because you're limited in internal rotation in one of two places, either at the hip joint or at the lower leg. If you can't produce internal rotation, your leg will be in more external rotation. This is why your foot sticks out and you got the duck walk. The easiest way to test out which camp you're in is to check your hip mobility. Lie on your back and bend one knee. Let your leg fall to the side without twisting your back. If your knee hovers about 2 to 3 fist lengths away from the ground, you're limited in hip external rotation, meaning the duck foot is probably coming from the shin. Next, bring your leg across the middle of the body without twisting your back. If you can't get your knee past your thigh, you're limited in hip internal rotation. And so your duck feet reason is because of a hip restriction. If you're limited in both, start with the movements that improve external rotation first, and then go after the ones that improve hip internal rotation. We'll start by improving hip external rotation, which fixes the lower leg duck foot problem. Line your back with your hips at 90 degrees. Straighten the knees. This will get the waistband area down toward the ground. Getting this area flat without forcing it by tucking the hips and rounding the back gets the upper pelvis and lower back to relax. This shifts your weight backwards, which is needed to improve hip external rotation. Reach your arms up to about 110 degrees of shoulder flexion and move the palms upward. Take a slow 4 to 8 count exhale through the mouth and reach the arms. This will help the lower back flatten to the ground. Hold this position, taking 5 to 10 count inhales through the nose and slow 4 to 8 count exhales through the mouth. Now, just because you can shift your weight backward in this position doesn't mean that you can do it in standing. For that, we'll need a standing drill that incorporates similar strategies. And this one that I'm going to show you is money for addressing the lower leg position related to duck feet. Be about 1 foot away from the wall. Your feet should point straight ahead and be flat on the ground. Straightening the foot, that turns the tibia inward, which you need to fix duck feet in this case. Bend the knees, getting the waistband onto the wall. This will help shift your weight backward in standing and improve hip external rotation. Look straight ahead with your hands up to collarbone height. Take a slow 5 to 10 count inhale through the nose. During the exhale, use the inner part of your heel and the ball of the big toe to push yourself back into the wall. Pushing your foot this way teaches you how to externally rotate the hip and internally rotate the leg simultaneously, which you need to improve duck feet. But learning this in standing is only half the battle. When we walk, we have to do this one leg at a time. So to really seal the deal for this presentation of the duck foot, we need to drive a single leg exercise. Stand on a box with a kettlebell in a rack position. Soften the knees. Keep your foot flat with a bit more weight on the inner part of the foot. Just don't tip the foot to achieve that weight bearing. Take a slow inhale through the nose for a 3 to 5 count. As you do this, step back and down. Aim your kneecap toward the ground. Stay shallow on this so you can get the hip position necessary to drive external rotation. Exhale and push your foot down to return to the start. This push helps drive the internal rotation needed to fix the duck feet. But what if you were that person who had duck feet because you're limited in hip internal rotation? You'll need a different strategy, and you'll want to start with this. Stand in front of a box with your feet in their normal resting duck foot position. Now you might be thinking, Zach, shouldn't I point my feet forward? Isn't that what we're trying to fix? Well, yeah, but the last time you probably had hip internal rotation was when Bill Clinton was president. And I feel your pain. So you have to start in the range that you have available. But the second part of this exercise is where we'll drive the internal rotation. Slowly exhale through the mouth and reach a 5 to 15 pound weight out in front of you. Keep a 90-degree angle at the shoulder. This will help you shift your hips backward, which places the load on the bottom part of the hips. This area is often tight when you're limited in internal rotation. Take a slow inhale through the nose for about a 5 count. As you breathe in, sit on the box at the exact same 5 count pace. Hinging the hips back, as well as the angle of hip flexion, are the two key factors that help promote hip internal rotation. Make sure to maintain your arms at 90 degrees of shoulder flexion because it helps with that weight shift. If your arms raise up as you hinge back, you're not going to open up the back of the hips as well. Sit with a dead stop at the box. Keeping the bent forward position, avoid rocking back as that limits the hip mobility gains. Take a slow 5 count exhale and return to the start position, keeping the knees unlocked at the top. As you gain motion, slowly point your feet inward. You'll know how much if you recheck your hip internal rotation test. So cool, you opened up some space to have more hip internal rotation, but walking is a single leg effort. You still might be a bad mother ducker as you walk. So we need to drive a single leg exercise that promotes hip internal rotation. Lie on your back with your feet flat. Your waistband should be flat on the ground. If it's not, elevate the hip. Press the inner part of the foot, the heel and the ball of the big toe, straight down into the ground without tipping them inward or losing the waistband contact on the ground. This encourages foot pronation, which is often limited in people with duck feet. If you get this right, you'll feel your upper and middle hamstrings work. If you don't, and you feel your glutes doing most of the work or your quads, you're actually externally rotating the hip, which is the problem that we started with in the first place. To fix that, make sure the waistband stays flat on the ground. Now, here's where it gets tricky. To work the single leg component, press one foot down heavy, then lift the opposite foot off the ground. This should cook the hamstrings on the down leg. Your pelvis should stay flat on the ground. If it lifts up, you'll need to elevate your legs more. Hold this position, taking a 5 to 10 count inhale through the nose and a slow 4 to 8 count exhale through the mouth. If you get it right, you'll notice that your lower back will start to flatten on the ground. This helps shift your weight backwards, which is needed to improve internal rotation and fix the duck feet. If you're arching like a mother, reach your arms slowly towards the ceiling on the exhale. Getting foot pronation is critical for fixing duck feet, but that move only teaches you the concept. It doesn't mean that you're going to use it in standing. We need a drill that helps encourage foot pronation in standing, especially on single leg. You can do this with a split squat on a slant. Having your foot on a slant, especially if you keep weight on the inner part of the heel and the ball of the big toe, encourages pronation, but it limits the range. Most people who have duck feet and limited hip internal rotation don't have much pronation to begin with. So get one foot on there with the opposite foot back about 2 of your foot lengths. Soften both knees. Exhale and reach your arms forward without losing trunk position. Take a slow 5 count inhale and drop straight down about halfway. The front knee should go forward and the back kneecap should go straight down. If you get it right, you'll feel mostly the quad, and glute on the front leg. If it's mostly the back leg, shift your weight forward to the front, keeping the knees bent. A lot of people straighten the back knee as they do this. That is going to be a major fail. Hold this position and take slow breaths, 5 to 10 count inhales through the nose and 4 to 8 count exhales through the mouth. If you can work up to a 2-minute hold, no problem. Up the difficulty by making the slant smaller and smaller until your foot is flat on the ground and people call you the duckless wonder. We've done things to the hips, we've done things to the leg, and we've done things to the foot to fix duck feet. But the one thing we haven't done is learn how to walk in a way that limits the odds of you falling into this pattern again. Simply walking with heel to toe contact allows you to express the overall internal rotation needed in the leg to get rid of the duck foot walking for good. Now, if you notice that your walking is better, but you get duck feet with other activities, you might need to improve your internal rotation even more. If so, then I would check out this video right here. It's got my best sequence that I use with countless patients and clients to get crazy changes in hip internal rotation.